Morning, guys. Happy Monday. Coach Heather here with Nutrition News. Today we're going to talk about something that is not necessarily nutrition. The title Nutrition News, we use it a little loosely. Today we're going to talk about violence in sport. Why I feel it's important to talk about is because many of us out there have kids that we're raising. They're growing up in youth sports programs. And violence, aggressive behavior is becoming more and more predominant. And it's something that I think we need to be aware of. And I wanted to have like a discussion opener to get some more feedback from people to see what your thoughts are and how you feel about the issues. So today we're going to talk about violence in sport and how it is affecting our culture, our little ones, everyone in general. So George Orwell, 1945 said, "Serious sport has nothing to do with fair play. It is bound up with hatred, jealousy, boastfulness, disregard of all rules, and sadistic pleasure in witnessing violence. In other words, it is war minus the shooting." While some of you may disagree strongly with that statement, I do think that there is a little bit of truth in there. When you look at ESPN, when you look at TSN, you look at the sports highlights, there is a shift, you have to admit. The big hits, any injuries, this is what is getting their time. So their top 10 highlights usually involve a lot of people getting knocked down, rules getting broken, hits sometimes, whether it's an accident or not, if the official's getting hit, a fight, spectator quarrels have been highlighted there as well. So it seems to be that in the media, a lot of emphasis is getting put on aggressive and violent behaviors. Now this is coming down through the media, but it's hitting all levels of sport, right from youth all the way up to professional. There is a bridge in between there when we get to high school, to amateur sports. I think this is a particularly vulnerable age because how kids get recognized is for a long part through media coverage. If they're looking to get drafted, if they're looking to get a scholarship to a school, a lot of it is through media exposure. And so if, acting aggressive or violent in their game is going to get them exposed and get them noticed and get their name in the newspaper so that some scout sees it, well, that's what is happening, is that players are getting acknowledged for their aggressive and violent behaviors. We do still see some talent acknowledged as well, but you have to admit that as our society gets fast-paced, gets a little bit more aggressive itself, higher levels of stress, that it is reflected in what we want from sport. So there is a bigger emphasis on violence and aggression in sport. In kids, we see it if the pros are getting away with this kind of behavior, then that's sending the message to our children that that kind of behavior is acceptable as well. We get a ton of parents. I was out watching a soccer game the other night, and tons of parents on the sideline, screaming at the officials, screaming at the ref. I grew up refereeing soccer when I was younger as well. So I think I started when I was 12, just running around the field, having fun. They were, up to my knee. They were 4 or 5 years old. Parents on the sidelines screaming. I remember one particular incident where I had a player fake an injury because a person from the other team had gotten the ball and they were on a breakaway. As soon as I blew the whistle, he popped up. He was good to go. I made him sit off and substitute because of it. And I got yelled at by the parents. I got yelled at by the coach of his team. And I thought, how young are these kids and what is the message that we're sending them? So just little things to be mindful of is, what is the message and what is more important? Because it seems like nowadays winning is the ultimate goal of sport. It is not having fun. It's not learning different social behaviors or how to work together as a cohesive team. It is winning at all costs. And for some people that might be the message they want to send, but I think especially in youth sport that we really need to check the emphasis and the message that we're sending to kids. So when you talk about violence itself, violence can be defined as the use of excessive force which causes or has obvious potential to cause harm or destruction. So again, there are many different definitions of it, but when you're using excessive force to cause harm to another person, that goes against what sports are all about. There are specific sports where aggressive behavior is needed. You look at football. I grew up playing rugby. I know that when the other player has the ball, I am supposed to hit them. I am supposed to tackle them. But there is a way to get it done. You do wrap the legs. You don't just check them. So there are ways to keep that behavior aggressive within the rules of play. But we see these big hits and these aggressive acts that go beyond what's necessary for the purpose of the sport. They are looking to intentionally cause harm. But again, I think it goes back to the pressure that they are under. Even we talked about amateur and high school athletes trying to get acknowledgement and recognition, to get drafted, to get scholarships. Then you go into professional, looking for endorsements, looking to renew their contract. There are some teams that will give you bonuses for the number of hits or the number of tackles. So again, what is the message here? What is the purpose of it? So just, a couple of things. I wanted to really just talk about things and see what kind of comments I would get from you guys regarding the issues, and what you think can be done about it. In general, a lot of the aggression, a lot of violence can be argued that it comes from, biological history, nature. We used to go out, we had instincts to hunt and gather. So we're warriors. The first games back in Rome, gladiators, we're meant to be violent. Sport it was seen as a small scale war at the time. And one side was declaring battle on the other until one side won. That's kind of the essence of what it is about. Spectators became soldiers, getting involved in the battle just as much as the players sometimes. The desire to conquer at all costs was always there, resorting to drastic measures to come out on top. That is essentially how it has evolved. We've thrown a few more rules in there and added some different aspects to it, but really that was the core of it. So are we that far off from how it originated? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends on how you view things, right? Also, there's an argument there that violence and aggression in sport comes from socialization. It's a learned response. Excuse me. So playing through all levels of sport, you're going to learn violence and aggression through that socialization. There's a lot of peer pressure in team sports, that group mentality, to follow the herd. So if your other teammates, if your coach, if that is how things are planned out, if that's your goal, your tactics, then definitely it is going to come. When you see it in media, when you see your parents or people you grew up with behaving that way in sport, then definitely it's going to become a learned behavior. So we've tried to find the answers, whether sports provide a positive outlook for stress, for aggression, or if it actually teaches us that violence and that aggression. So there are two sides to every coin, and I really think it's interesting to see what people think about the topic. And the other thing too is that when we're talking about kids in youth sport and these socialization, these are things that they're going to then take with them into other aspects of their life. So in school, in jobs, when they have that win at all cost mentality, will they then be more liable to cheat on a test, or will they be fair and honest with their friends and their classmates? So there definitely are other topics to think about. So that desire for victory and success not only found in players, but in coaches as well, spectators, fans of sport. There's always a rival. There's always a battle for control, for power, and there's always a desire to win and to dominate. So it's heightened with aggression, with fights, speed, and danger. Look at the kind of sports that are more popular now. They are extreme. We're doing these obstacle course races where we're, putting our bodies through these fantastic feats, and these extreme sports have become more popular. I know even since I was in high school here, we had a rugby team, and now there's, the wave rugby, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I grew up playing rugby. I cannot wait for my kids to have a try and see if they're interested or not. But even the popularity of rugby itself in the area has always been there. like I mentioned, the obstacle course races. You look at football, you look at sports on TV, the snowboarding, the BMX, everything has just gotten to the extreme. So there is that craving for risk, right? Is somebody going to get hurt? Is it dangerous? So there is that that sort of urgency, that desire for something a little bit more. And if it's not there in terms of risk, then maybe they add it in terms of aggression or violence. And now we almost demand it. We almost demand aggression and violence in sport as spectators when we're there. And I think it's a vicious cycle, right? Between the media offering it and us as spectators and fans demanding it. It just keeps building and building and building. There's also spectator violence is also on the rise. So, and that can take place either at the site of the game, it can take place before or after, during the event, but it is also on the rise as well. So with such a propensity for spectators to commit violent acts, it is important to understand their causes. One of the greatest draws to sport in our society is the camaraderie that it creates between players, teams, organizations, and fans. Almost to the point of obsession with some of the fans and spectators as well, but they really get that sense of community, of family, and then they take it very personally. They take it to heart if one of their family members gets injured, if they lose. So there is emotional investment to that team, to that player, and when things do not go that way, then they are upset. And again, when you're around that kind of passion and intensity, things get heated. We are seeing more fights. I just saw coverage the other day. My husband lives just outside of Windsor in a little town called Essex. Very close to that, there was a huge fight at a lacrosse game the other day. So I was just reading that about 2 weeks ago. Definitely more spectator violence as well. You always hear about soccer, football matches over in Europe. And again, it's just that passion, that desire, and something does not go their way, and they want to take it out on someone. We think about factors such as alcohol, level of game importance. So is it just an exhibition game or is it a playoff game? Everything like that. The nature of the sport itself. So maybe we're not going to see as many spectator fights at a golf tournament as we are at a rugby match or a lacrosse match. So the nature of a sport itself. But definitely in general, we are seeing more violence and aggression within sport. So the last sort of question I wanted to throw out to you guys that are watching this at any point in time is, what do you think can be done about it? Realistically, if we were to try and bring down the level of aggression in sport and aggression and violence in sport, what could we do? So a couple of options that I'll just throw out there. Do we look at officiating? Do we look at the rules? Do we put more rules in place? Do we allow for further repercussions? Some of these hits, when they are that intense, when they are that purposeful, do we look at going outside of the game and involving the law? Do we press charges? Do we sort of take what we have at the adult level and really focus on children and setting rules, setting a better example so that they have a better image of sport as they go through? And where is that stress placed on? Is it a win-at-all-cost mentality, or is it more teamwork, cohesion, and the stress is placed on that? So what do we do? Or do we just go with it? Another topic that is in the same ballpark in terms of what can be done is drug and sport. And that is another topic that I'd like to talk about as well. But in terms of violence and aggression, what do we do? Is it, is it one of those ethical issues where you just say, I'm choosing not to, I'm not going to participate in that? Or do we look at, this is my talent, this is my gift, and this is how I'm going to make a living for my family, and in this short period of time I have to make as much money as I can, because with particular sports you're not going to do them for your whole life. So these athletes can be under a lot of pressure to make that money in as quick of a time as possible. So is it therefore more acceptable for us to let them take these risks and be more aggressive and more violent with their behaviors, hoping to get rewarded for it and make more money long term? Or what can be done? Do you see any issues with it? Do you see any problem? Or are we okay with what we have and the message that it's sending to everyone involved in sport? So I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think about the level of aggression and violence in sport as it is right now? Are we okay with it? Is there anything that you think should be done in terms of media coverage, in terms of behavior from professional athletes who are sending the message to our youth? So media, professional athletes, those involved in youth programs. Do you think there's anything that we can be doing or should be doing to decrease the level of aggression and violence in sport? So that is your homework, guys. You can message me personally, comment below, but I really would like to hear what you guys have to think on this topic and what your opinions are. What's going on this week at the gym? Today we have our 007 James Bond workout happening. Thursday we have a King Tut workout happening. Friday it is the KM 1000 workout. If you're not sure what that means, then you need to get in here and find out. If you do know what that means, then you're going to be in here celebrating. Either way, we're going to see you guys in the gym this week, and I'm looking forward to it. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you next week. Okay? Take care.